Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Reference Point. I'm your host, Dave Cokerhook. This evening, we're going to be discussing a topic that I think you're all going to be familiar with by name, but we're going to dig into the intricacies of it, and that has to do with this concept of a TED Talk. My guests today are, to my left here is Doris Pickering. Doris is the owner of a company called Silicon Valley Speaks, and she's an executive presence coach. Doris, welcome to Reference Point.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here again.
Yes, you've been here a couple
I
of times
have
in the
been.
past talking about things that are kind of related to the topic we're going to have today. And also joining me here again from Southern California is Jennifer Myers. Jen is a prison consultant and advocacy person, and she has done TED Talks, more than one. And so I couldn't think of a better person to have on the show here to discuss this topic. So Jen, welcome back to Reference Point.
Thank you. It's great to be here again.
So this is very cool. All right, first question. What exactly is a TED Talk? Which one of you wants to help me with that one?
I'll take a stab. So years ago, I think it's like 20 years already or around there, it was created. TED actually stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. So correctly, it just stands for somebody's name, which made it easy to remember. But they're actually like a highly positioned, elevated presentation that is basically the gold standard of an incredibly educational presentation. It's not about selling yourself or selling what you do or your services, but truly just educating the masses with really great, compelling ideas and sharing it to the world.
So technology, education,
entertainment.
entertainment, and so it's an educational forum for technology, entertainment, and design.
Correct.
I don't get the design. What's design all about? I mean, I can get the technology thing.
Right.
And entertainment, it's sort of like, okay, cool, you got somebody up there. Yeah. But design, what is?
I think that, and Jen, hop in here too, is to be more inclusive. So it's not just high-tech people. It's not just people in the education field, but throwing it open more for like a design element. But also, how do you design your presentation in a way that makes it entertaining and palatable and makes people want to watch it?
Okay.
Yeah, and I want to say something around that. I mean, I think designing too. I mean, designing ideas and TED. Now there's TEDx and 3,000 plus events globally. So there's so many different ideas hopping on the stage all the time. And I think that by sharing ideas with the world, we are also designing the world in a new way.
Okay.
So that's a creative way to say it.
Cool. So you said a term. You said TEDx. What's the difference between TED and TEDx? Is that TEDx is Ted's little brother or something like that?
You can actually kind of think of it in that way. It's like TED Light, if you will.
TED Light.
TED is
Michelob.
yeah,
Michelob
TED,
Light.
exactly. You can consume more of it. So TED is like a global stage,
Okay.
whereas TEDx is regional. So like say you could have a county-based, you could have a college, university-based TEDx platform. You could have like your own organization, like say a Rotary could have a TEDx stage, whereas TED is you're going to bigger venues, which has a bigger appeal. But it's really, and you can have high schools, like high schools have TEDx stages and platforms.
Okay, I want to get more into that in a second, but Jen, you've done both TED and TEDx talks, is that correct?
I've done a TEDx talk, and what I've done is I've delivered a TEDx talk, and I've also I'm a TEDx co-organizer. So I produced a TEDx event inside of a prison.
Ah, okay. Yeah, we talked about that at the last show, didn't we? When you okay, all right. So, the I'm trying to quite understand the significant difference between the global and the regional. Is it like the reach is not going to be as broad, or is it that the topic is more focused in a particular geography?
For me, and again, Jen, you can follow up. I don't think it's so much the topic. The topic can be more regionally based. It's easier to get into a TEDx Talk because it's local. Like if you went to Stanford, you could do the Stanford TEDx, where it would be more difficult a lot of times to get into TED. And a lot of times if you do a TEDx, then that's easier to get into a TED Talk.
So who runs this thing?
That's where Jen comes. People like the organizers.
Yeah, and I'd like to follow up for a minute and say
Yes.
something about that. I mean, not that I know the whole story, but originally, TED, was a very tight knit group of individuals who started this, and very exclusive. And it became so popular that they wanted to branch out and make it more accessible, and thus TEDx's, and allowing people to apply to get a license and to do TEDx's all over. And I think now mostly, to get on the TED stage, there's not a lot of stages doing TED events and TED Talks where you have speakers on stage. It's almost invite only. And anymore, getting on the TEDx stage is just as important as getting on the TED stage. I mean, I really don't see that there's much of a difference.
Right.
I mean, it is nice to be invited, but again, TEDx is really holding hands with TED.
So can anyone do a TEDx?
I
Doris,
would
you wanna
say,
answer that?
yes. In my opinion, anyone can do a TEDx.
There's no requirement that you have to have such and such a degree or such and such
No.
experience or whatever?
No. In fact, I was just looking online that a 7-year-old is the youngest person to have done a TEDx talk in last year.
Okay.
So there's no real age limit. You could be 100, you could be apparently 7. So again, it's not like the qualification based. However, there is a process that you have to go to. And Jen alluded that she is a TEDx organizer.
Okay.
So you have to go through that process to get accepted. And so that's how Jen and I actually started working together. So Jen, do you want to describe to everybody like what that process is? Because I think it's real important to know.
Yeah, to become a speaker. Yeah. And I like to say, when you ask, can anybody speak? Yes. And I think it can be distorted that, well, I have to be a speaker. I have to be an expert at something. But really for me, the main core of TED is that it's about, spreading ideas. And so, it's really about if somebody has a good idea that they've discovered, right, is true, that they want to offer to the world, that's what a TEDx talk is, and connecting to that passion. And so as far as landing a TED Talk, every organizer, there are strict TED rules. So, I always like to make a joke, who has stricter rules, TED or prison?
Oh.
And, TED has pretty strict rules, which is pretty funny. But also, every individual organizer can decide within those rules how they want to choose a speaker, how they want to do a call out. And usually every organizer will have a certain amount of time where they will do a call out for speakers. So, they should have, they usually have their own website that TED hosts, and they will somehow or another, open it up. They'll have a theme, and they just start taking in applications. And as Doris said, there is an application process, and that's, pretty strict. And you apply. Often, there are some organizers that will keep a bucket of applications and maybe be looking for a while, like, oh, I have an idea. I'd really love to have a speaker speak on our stage about this. And so, maybe they'll find somebody and pull that person in to their stage. But, more than not, it's a pretty fair process of looking at the applications.
Do the speakers, if TEDx location is looking to put on a talk or get some people there, do they need to be from that local community?
Yeah. Do you want me to jump in? No.
No.
No, yeah.
That was pretty emphatic.
Who will accept me? I'm going there.
Go ahead. Yeah,
So-
most of the clients that I have honestly land talks outside of their home base. All
So
the time.
if you've
and
got-
globally too.
So if you've got an idea or something you want to communicate, you want to talk about, and it meets the basic parameters of what is acceptable within a TED environment, TEDx Talk environment, can you? I'm understanding from what you said, Jen, is that you can submit multiple locations until somebody says yes.
110%. And Doris, you want to share more about that?
Right. Yeah, and so it's really interesting because I'm so happy that Jen and I were able to meet and cross paths, because when we met, we were realizing that people can come into the TEDx or TED organization. We're going to say TEDx because that's basically where we work, 2 different ways. they come in through people like me, where they say, I want to improve my speaking. Some of them already say, I want to give a TEDx talk, but they're not good enough, if you will, with fleshing out their story or their script, or they know they have an idea, but they don't know how to put it together. So I help people in that area, creating their story, creating their scripts, practicing and rehearsing. So before COVID shut down, I was actually going to become an organizer. And then, it's a lot of work. And then COVID happened, and then Jen and I met, and I'm going, oh my God, why recreate the wheel?
Right.
When I can work with Jen. And so the beautiful thing is Jen is already an organizer. And so she has her process, but people can either start with somebody like they'll meet Jen first, or they'll meet somebody like me first. But either way, they end up in the same place.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about this concept of being able to get in front of people and deliver a talk like that, because public speaking happens to be one of those, primary fears that a lot of folks have. So, what's involved? I mean, somebody can have a great idea, but if you can't communicate it in any way, shape, or form, then it just falls flat. So, how do you help people? What can you do? I mean, what can you do to help somebody get past that challenge?
Right. So where I typically start is saying, do you have an idea? And typically they'll go, oh yes, my idea is going to be, let's use Jen's example, restorative justice, right? Okay, that sounds, it's a crystal clear topic, restorative justice. Okay, so what do you want to share about it? That's when people start getting into trouble. So that the crystal clear path ends up being like a Medusa's head, where you have, but I want to talk about this, but then we have to bring this, and then, we can't forget this. And then it just becomes too muddled. Because again, a TEDx is 11 minutes.
11 minutes.
11 minutes.
I was going to ask about that.
TED is 18, and they're pretty darn strict about the time, right?
Yeah.
So TEDx is very limited, 11 to 12 minutes.
So you're going to have have had the opportunity to run through this multiple times,
right.
So that when that 11-minute mark is, you're not just 2/3 of the way through.
Right. But for me,
Wow.
even before it gets that part is, again, do you have in your own brain an idea that you are so crystal clear about that you can not be persuaded to keep going down the other rabbit holes? Because there's, we all have a million topics with a million subtopics,
Sure,
right? But it's just like you need to stick with one. Yeah.
I think we have a photo of Jen at her TED Talk or TEDx talk. So yours was an 11-minute presentation, is that right? Then?
No, so actually, and there's a lot of different timings that it can be in, and I think you know this too, Doris. I mean, my talk was 14. On the stage that I spoke at TEDx Delaware Wilmington Women, it was 20 speakers, a very large event. I was like third to last. It was a very long day. Some of the speakers only had 6 minutes to talk. Some had 5, some had 12, some had 14. Like literally, it was all across the board. Luckily, I had 14, which is like the sweet spot for a TED Talk. So yeah, I really loved it. I just want to share one thing that is a byproduct of delivering a TED Talk that I don't think people realize until they do. The whole journey is very powerful. And like Doris talked about finding your idea, one key around that is finding an idea that you're really passionate about. And so it really can stir up a lot of emotion to try to orchestrate and get coached through. Like when Doris coaches you through your talk, writing your script, it's a whole journey in itself, right, Doris? And then on top of that, by the time you get to the event, you're meeting all of these other incredible speakers, and it's really about connection. And I think that's what TED's all about, is connecting worlds and connecting people. When you speak together, it creates such a connection. It's so powerful.
Right. Makes sense.
And it's not like you're a professor dispelling information, right? It's like the number one important thing, in my opinion, is you have to have an emotional connection with not only with your story that you're telling, but your audience has to be, they have to be able to feel it, right?
I can relate to that from the standpoint of singing, which I do a lot of, because if you aren't there's always a message in a song,
Yeah.
and you can either be deadpan and just stand up there and, you know, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, blah, or you can actually emote, and then you connect with somebody. So I can
Right.
see how that would be.
Yeah.
Jen, how does one determine as an organizer whether you're going to give someone 4 minutes, 8 minutes, 14 minutes?
You know, that's a personal preference. And as far as I'm concerned, I think 6 minutes or 5 minutes is a little bit too short. So I think, you know, in regards to organizers that put a lot of speakers on one stage, they only have so much time to do it in.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's so interesting what an organizer chooses anyways, whether it's the timing of a talk, you know, what the themes of the different talks and how they fit together, who goes first, who goes last. It's like this big puzzle piece that has to fit together. And a lot of times, you know, an organizer will get all of these applications. Sometimes there's like 130, 150, like it's really competitive. And they start piecing it together and they'll go, oh, but I'm sort of missing this one topic. And oh, that can fit really nicely with this speaker. So
Yeah.
it's like a recipe. It's like cooking.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
is there, as part of the parameters from TED and TEDx, a maximum time limit for the event?
I know TED. Well, I know TED can go like 3 or 4 days. I mean, you know, the TED event, and they have many, many speakers.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, because my experience, I've been in 3 different TEDx environments. So, like, for example, when I was working with somebody at UC Davis, they had, I believe, 8 speakers. They might have had 10, but they were all 12 minutes. And then the other one was at Los Gatos High School, right? So then they were, again, I think they were like right around 12 minutes. But again, you know, like Jen had a different experience where there was like 20, you said, or 22. That's a lot.
Speakers. That's a lot. Yeah, and Doris is right. I mean, a lot of times there's 2 sections, and there's, you know, 8 speakers and 4 speakers in each section, and it's a lot more tailored. So yeah, this whole 20 speakers and all these different timings is a little bit more unusual.
Yeah,
How often does a TEDx event occur?
often. Not at the same location. Around the world, there's probably one, I don't know, Jen, would you say every day?
Yeah. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
there's 3,000 plus TEDx's globally, and an organizer has to do at least one event a year, and then a couple of salons, which are, you know, events where you show videos and you invite people over. But like, for example, the TEDx event I spoke at, even though it was a smaller stage, the organizer, Ajit, had been an organizer for like, I don't know, 6, 7 years. He's one of the best organizers. He would put on like, oh my goodness, like 12 events a year. So, you know, you can do really as many events as you want as long as you run them in the right way.
Who funds them? I mean, there's a facility that you're going to have to, where you have, then you've got the lighting and you got the audio and you got the cameras. So there's personnel, there's the venue. Who pays for those things? Does the speaker have to pay to participate, or is all of this done as a nonprofit organization? How does this work?
Doris, do you want to start, or do you want me to jump in?
I'm going to have you jump in because you're the actual organizer.
Yeah.
I just am in the background working with the speeches.
I love it, and I can't do it without you. So, you know, so the cool thing about TED, which really keeps the integrity of TED, is that nobody gets paid. So everybody's a volunteer, the organizer, the volunteers that help organize the event, and the speakers. And that's what's so cool about it. But the way that you, for example, there'll be people that you contract with, you know, like you said, you need to pay for the stage. You've got your film crew you need to pay. So there's certain things you do contract, you know, the food, if it's not donated to you. So you do need, an organizer is responsible for raising those funds through, you know, whether it's ads or they're raising that money, you know, through the community and different businesses to pay for those things. And also, you know, if, you know, whether they create ad space or whatnot, you know, they're also getting paid through the ticket sales.
Yeah.
So I'm going to shift the perspective on this a little bit. Given that organizers for TEDx talks are local, okay, what is the value proposition for the community in which that organizer resides to support that effort?
So for me, it is such a huge diversity and equity and inclusion opportunity to have in a community not just one but several of these organizations happening events throughout the year. Because what a gold mine it is for the community, especially because there is no barrier to be able to do one, other than getting your speech down and getting accepted somewhere. But for me, that is my number one value proposition for the people. What an opportunity to increase your visibility in the community.
Clearly for the speaker.
For the speaker, but also to increase the richness of the community,
community.
to be having these, right?
Okay. Yeah. Any
What do you think, Jen?
thoughts on that, Jen?
No, it is all about togetherness and bringing people together and across, like Doris said, barriers. And anybody can attend and anybody can speak on stage if you get accepted. And that is the beauty of it. And I think that is the whole vision of TED. Again, every video, even it goes outside of your community. It goes up on the YouTube site from that organizer, 3 million viewership, and most videos will get pulled over onto the TED site. So you're impacting the world, and that's why people want to speak on stage.
Right.
Yeah.
Plus, again, not to diminish the personal transformation that happens when you do something that big, right?
Yeah.
Because you yourself are transformed.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, so that's an awesome thing.
Doris, you had mentioned a couple of, you mentioned there's something at Stanford, there's a TEDx group at Stanford, there's a TEDx organizer down at Los Gatos High School. How many are in the San Francisco Bay Area that you are aware of?
That I'm aware of, I would say maybe 5. I know Marin has a big one, and they're very, very active. But there's not as many as there should be. I'm surprised that at the places that don't have one. I think most of the universities have one. I would like to see more.
But they don't have to be affiliated with an education
Not necessarily,
facility.
right. It's just typically they have the space and because they have the student body that's there for the technicians. So again, as Jen was mentioning, everybody's a volunteer.
Got it.
And so that's the appeal of having universities do it or schools, because the people doing it, they're also getting an education. How do you do sound? How do you do video? How do you do the lighting and work with people like that?
So we're getting close to the point where we've got 5 minutes left in this show, 7 minutes right now, and I want to talk a little bit about getting, how do I want to say this? I think that there are people in the audience who could participate if they had the either to know how to go about it and or had the courage to step out and do it. So can you ladies talk about that a little bit? Where would somebody go if they have an idea and they're not even sure whether it's good, bad, or indifferent? How should they proceed?
That's it, Jen. So do you do the promoters promote their? You mentioned a website, but is there more active promoting to say, hey, if you want to do one, come see me, right? Because I can do that from my business, but it's not going to reach people in the audience.
Yeah, no, I don't think that from an organizer standpoint, we don't recruit to get speakers, or it's not about marketing, so I think, for me, I do what I do, which is I help people land TED Talks. And that's why I love meeting you, because you're a coach. And I think more and more, there's more people popping up to support people in this landscape, because it's gotten really big and it's gotten really competitive, and people are confused and they're afraid, like, how can I, think that I could ever speak on stage? And so, it's really helpful to have somebody like Doris or myself, or there's numerous other people too, who can support you in believing in yourself and help you figure out the landscape.
Right. But I want to go one level deeper and assume that there are people who are watching this show who have it in the back of their mind, gee, I'd like to be able to talk about that. Or I'd like what I know people should know, that sort of a thing. What do you tell them? What is the first step in moving in that direction of getting to a possible
So for me, it'd be reaching out to either someone like me or someone like Jen, because Jen can also help them figure out what can be acceptable and what it's like, nah, that won't fly. And for me, I can help again distill, do you really have a topic there, or something that would be of interest, and can you really define it and be passionate about it? But again, like for me, I network a lot, and that's part of my marketing is letting people know if you want to do a TED Talk, I can help you with your speech and your practicing. But that's me. It's not necessarily what Jen's coming from.
Yeah, and I also want to say one thing. Like, we're going to reach outside and say, okay, so in every community, like there are usually, hopefully, there's an organizer in your city, in your town, and so to reach out and find that website, find that organizer, and email them, and get connected. You can email and get connected to the TED community, so you can start there. Watch a TED Talk, see what talks you like. Try to start to dialogue with the videos and with TED.
So,
for sure.
If someone wanted to. Is there a website to go to say, I'm interested in finding out more about doing a TED Talk? Is
How
it
to
like
be a TEDx speaker.
www.tedtalk.com?
Literally, how to be a TEDx speaker.
So you could just go on in Google.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, so we're down to the last couple of minutes, ladies. I'm going to leave it up to you to have any closing remarks about doing TED Talks.
No, I just think people like Jen are angels on earth, because the saying used to be years ago, there's 5 books in each of us to write. Now it's just, I think it's been repleted with, now there's 5 TED Talks in each of us that need to be shared with the world. And, I find, especially since COVID hit, there just seems to be this longing for people to want to share part of their journey, and it doesn't have to have anything to do with COVID, but there's just this longing to
get out there and communicate. Okay, Jen, you get the last word.
Yeah, and I just want to say, Doris is incredible, and having somebody guide you through pulling out your story and what your idea is so healing and important, and that TED Talks are so empowering, and I just think it's such a community builder, and there's nothing like the experience of delivering one, and I think everybody has one inside of them, and I think everybody should go for it, no matter what. Just cross that bridge and
go
give it a shot.
Especially because Jen will help you get accepted.
All right. Well, listen, thank you, Jen. Thank you, Doris. Really appreciate the two of you being here. This is exciting. Ladies and gentlemen, think about what you have inside that you want to communicate and take some action. Do it.
Yeah.
What the heck? You got everything to gain and nothing to lose. So thanks to the crew. Thanks to Doris and Jen for being back here on Reference Point. And ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your being there as well, and we'll see you next time.